Peace, peace. This is your host, Selah Shalom. And this is a Cosmos Teachings in the Words of Jehovah and His Angel Ambassadors from the Cosmos Bible OAHSPE. And the topic of discussion today is going to be the God of War debunked. Because a lot of people give the approval just because it says in the Bible that God is a God of war. But what comes with war? Death and destruction. So what is God doing with those He destroyed? See, it's a lot of stuff that the Bible doesn't explain. It's very vague, and it leaves you to ponder rather than giving you a concrete answer. So we're going to show in the OAHSPE that God, true God, does not condone warfare. Warfare is condoned by the false gods. It was the false gods that inspired the Israelites to go in the land of Canaan to try to kill off the Canaanites. Any God that inspires warfare is not of the Creator, and judgment is rendered against them. And we're going to read some of the judgment that is rendered against anyone who participates in war. So when you go back and read your scriptures and you see God talking about war, consider these judgments that I'm about to read against warfare coming from true God through the Creator. Now in the book of Judgment, chapter 32, God judges against war. And I'm going to start with verse 8. Judgment is rendered against all nations and people on earth for this great darkness, these early deaths. And because these angels are thus bound to mortals and cannot go away from them until such time as mortals die, mortals are responsible and bound to train them by examples of righteousness and good works. Verse 9. Now aside from such angels, there are such as are slain in war, whose minds are in chaos, who dying in the heat of passion and fear and anger become wild and bound on the battlefield, or mayhap stroll away into deserted houses and castles, and are lost, bewildered, and unapproachable. Now with just that verse alone, if you understood that these were the conditions that awaits anyone who participate in warfare, that your spirit after death will be bewildered, will be wild, be angry, still with vengeance, you would think twice about participating in warfare. And you would have to question your God about these things, about, well, damn, if I go to war and die, what would be my conditions after death? See, these are things you got to question. Verse 10, of these there are hundreds of millions, and they are in all countries and amongst all peoples in the world. Verse 11, they are distracted and tormented with their own fear and bewilderment. See that? So by you participating in warfare, killing and shooting, you're going to torment your own mind, because what you see is going to still going to flash in your mind, and you're going to torment yourself. Anybody who kills somebody, they always tell you they remember the person they killed. They remember their face. They can't get it out their head. I done heard that numerous times. Verse 12. Judgment is rendered against all nations and people in the world who engage in war, thus bringing these afflictions upon the angels of heaven. See that? Why didn't the Bible tell you about the afflictions that the angels of heaven have to deal with when you kill people on earth and deal with the bewildered spirits that's being born into the atmosphere or spiritual realm? See, your God didn't tell you about that in the Bible. It didn't explain these conditions after death, which falls upon the angels. These same angels that's supposed to be in service to God. So why would God put these angels through affliction when He could avoid it altogether or deal with it in another manner instead of inspiring mortals to go to war, knowing that these conditions await them after death? Verse 13. Judgment is rendered against every nation and all people in the world who carry on war, or who are accessory to war, whereby any man created alive by Jehovah is slain, in defense of any king or other ruler, or in defense of any country or government in all the world. See that? So right here it's telling you that whoever carries on war, judgment is on them. So did not when Israel left Egypt after the 40 years in the wilderness, they went up in the war, they prepared the tribes to go to war. How are you going to be just delivered through redemption out of Egypt, being in bondage, go into the wilderness to prepare to go to war to battle Canaan? That ain't making no sense. There's nothing righteous about that. You got to consider these things and consider the God that's influenced you, that you believe in it, especially when it comes to dealing with death and destruction. Because none of y'all have died to know what's on the other side. So this is a fair warning right here coming from the OAHSPE. Why not to engage in war? Because of these afflictions to the spirits of the dead. Now, where we at? Alright, verse 15. And I judge him guilty also who is general, commander, captain, surgeon, or private that engage in war, or take part therein, abiding, abetting, or otherwise, whereby any man created alive by Jehovah is slain, or caused to suffer death. So right here in the OAHSPE, judgment is rendered against anyone participating in warfare. Your leaders, if you got any Israelites talking about going to war, they off. Be mindful of that. I'll lead that group. But then in your Bible, in Revelations, it says in chapter 19, when it talk about the second coming, the one sitting on the white horse with those, you know, what's the scripture in Revelation 19, the second coming, when it talk about the return, and he gonna have blood up to his waist and all that. All that's falsehood. That's not from the Creator. That's another false god coming to do battle with somebody else. Now, verse 16. And yet aside from angels who are in chaos, there are hundreds of millions who are in declination instead of resurrection. Such angels are those who in mortal life were whipped and tortured in prison, or mayhaps were hanged, or otherwise put to death. So we're showing you that you have angels declining instead of resurrecting due to the conditions that they face while alive on earth, being killed, being tortured, and as they cross over in spirit, they're not resurrecting, they're still declining. They may even still be being tortured in the wars that's going on in heaven. So all the U.S. soldiers that went to Iraq to go do battle, the ones that died over there are prisoners of wars in spirit over there, by the angels already over there. So it gets deep when you look at the full spectrum, because all we have is the physical aspect. So when somebody dies, we're like, oh, well, we don't know what happened. He died in warfare, bring the body back. But here it's showing you on the spiritual side what takes place after death. So this is even more fearful, because now you're getting both sides of the story. You're getting why you shouldn't engage in war, but if you do engage in war, these are the conditions that await you. That's what you got to be mindful of. Now, where we at? Alright, verse 17. These angels take delight in evil instead of good. You have some people who like to do evil, bring harm to people, and they rejoice. They feel good about it. Same thing with the angels. These angels take delight in evil instead of good. Sometimes they go about singly, and sometimes in gangs of hundreds and even thousands. Verse 18. In olden times, the false gods used such angels to fulfill curses on mortals. See that? He said in the olden times, the false gods used these angels to fulfill curses. That's no different than the OG getting some of the soldiers to go get murders, to commit murders for the team, for the gang. Bring back the possessions. Go rob that cat and bring back his money and drugs to the team. That's what the boss is sending out to the soldiers. Same thing with these false gods. Same proceedings. Again, verse 18. In olden times, the false god used such angels to fulfill curses on mortals, and to carry poison in the air, and annihilate mortals with foul diseases. See that? This is what the angels are doing. Interfering with mortals. Infecting the atmosphere. Polluting the atmosphere with foul smells and odors to make mortals die. So you may get a smell like, damn, where that smell coming from? Not knowing it's an angel behind that. It gets deep when you start understanding the possibilities of these things. Verse 20. Judgment is rendered. Verse 19. Let me go back. Behold, in this day my angels have shown thee that they can bring flowers and ponderous bodies. Even so could the false gods with their trained warrior angels, who delight in evil, cast mortals in death by poison and suffocation. Look what this is revealing to us. They're showing you that you have angels that can interfere with mortals and kill us. That's deep right there. So you're trying to tell me you got angels out here in the spirit world that can kill you. You most times you be like, yo, they dead, they passed over. Leave me alone, leave us alone, go in the heavens, go do what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? You can have one of your people could pass, one of your loved ones could pass. But if you see them in spirit, you're going to be spooked out like, nah, get up out of here. I loved you when you was alive, but now you spooking me out. So just to show you how the spirits of the dead can interfere with the living. put curses on them, cast them and kill them. That's deep right there. But all this is coming from the false gods and those practicing the ways of the false gods for hundreds of years. And all those spirits that died, all those people that died and crossed over, practicing these evil practices for hundreds of years. Now, verse 20, judgment is rendered against all nations and people who use prison as a place for whipping and torturing prisoners, and against all nations and people who put to death by hanging, shooting, or any way whatsoever any prisoner or any person who Jehovah created alive. Now look at that. Jehovah's against jail. How many jails we got in this country? How many jails we got around the world? How many COs that beat up prisoners and killed them? How many prisoners that kill other prisoners? Look at the hell and the conditions that we created for ourselves here due to these false gods. Because that's where the influence is coming from. Verse 21, judgment is rendered against the judge and the jury who condemn to death any man, and against the lawmakers who make or have left in force a law authorizing death as a penalty against any person Jehovah created alive, and against any sheriff or executioner that puts to death willingly, knowingly, any person Jehovah created alive. Now look at the penalties behind this. Look at the judgment of this. How many judges we got on this planet? How many judges we got in America? How many judges we got here in Atlanta? But the Creator is saying judgment is rendered against this. So now we got to question ourselves, like, damn, if the Creator's against all this and we participating on this daily throughout the years, what is the condition of these people after death if they are part of this? They definitely not going to the heavenly kingdom of true God off the bat. They got to get redeemed. They got to get purged from that before they can even come to true God's heavenly kingdom. So it gets deep, verse 22. And this is the bondage I put upon such as obey not my judgment and conform thereto. They shall not rise above the first resurrection in heaven, while war remains upon the earth. Even though their bondage be 100 years or 1,000 years, yet this my judgment against them shall not be put aside. So imagine that. The judgment for all the people that participate in this, the warfare, the judge, juror, the cop, everybody who participate in this behavior, they shall not rise above the first resurrection after death. They will stay in the lower heavens until they learn to purge themselves from all that cruel behavior. And it said it could take up to 100 years and it could take up to 1,000 years. Just imagine you sitting 1,000 years later for something you did 1,000 years previous. Consider that. Because the duration of time in creation is endless. Time is inevitable. It's like you don't want to be here 1,000 years later for something you did 1,000 years previous. That's what I'll say with that. Now, verse 23. Neither shall any king, nor queen, nor any other ruler in all the world impress as a soldier any man who is unwillingly to engage in war. And whosoever obeyeth not this my judgment shall not rise above the first resurrection in heaven, while war remain on earth. So basically saying, don't try to influence nobody else to go to war if they don't want to do it. So you know how the military like to recruit, especially them coming out of high school, they got the ROTC, they try to get you early, try to get your mind right to go into the military. But if you don't want to go, they can't press you. So basically that's what it's saying right there. But look how young they try to get you. I remember being in high school, you had the ROTC, they had the uniforms looking like little military cats. But that's how they groom you. They groom you from high school so you could join the forces when you get older and defend the country or defend the God that you worshiping ignorantly. Now, here's the catcher. Verse 24. Neither will I more consider the prayers of any king or queen or any other ruler or any nation of people in the world who engage in war, offense or defense, or who abide or abet war in any way whatsoever. Now consider that. He said he's not considering the prayers of anybody who engage in warfare. So when them soldiers go to war, when you see the pictures of the soldiers praying, whether it be the U.S. soldiers, whether it be the soldiers in the Middle East, the Muslim soldiers, they all praying with their uniforms about to engage in war. Who they praying to? If the true God and the Creator is rendering judgment against this, who's answering those prayers? It's definitely not the Creator, and it's definitely not true God. But you know who's answering those prayers? The false God. This is the perfect time for the false God to send some of his emissary angels to hear the prayers of these soldiers. And some of these angels may even back the soldiers in warfare, the same way Constantine was backed with the battle at Millennium Bridge with what's the cat? In 323 they had the battle where Luamung showed the cross in the sky. So these angels will back you in warfare, show signs and wonders and all that, while you thinking this is coming from God, not knowing it's coming from a false God. It gets very deep. Millennium Bridge, that was the battle with Constantine, 323 AD. That's the battle that solidified Constantine's belief into Luamung, who he thought was Christ, and that's when he started establishing the Christianity. Now, verse 25. But I will abandon all such people, and my Lord shall abandon them, and my holy angels shall abandon them. So anybody who's engaging in warfare, the holy angels of the Creator are abandoning them. And once the holy angels abandon the guardianship of mortals, you have other angels who assume guardianship over those mortals. And those angels are basically not from the Creator. So more likely they're coming from the false gods, or they're some drudges, or they're going to participate in what's going on to create more havoc in war. Verse 26. And they shall be abandoned unto their own harvest of evil spirits, and to all manner of drudges. Verse 27. Drudges are spirits of darkness, or people who are still continual evil, and people who are still practicing evil in spirit. So an evil person that's alive, and when they get killed and cross over in spirit, they still practice their evil ways. That's what a drudge is in the OAHSPE. Verse 27. And they shall be afflicted with assassinations and despoilers, with anarchy and riots and destruction. Verse 28. For they shall be made to understand that whosoever Jehovah created alive is sacred upon the earth, and that whatsoever heedeth not these my judgment sinneth against the Almighty. Now think about all the people that sinneth against the Almighty. Look at all the 7 countries. Every country got a nation, an army, ready to go to war to defend that nation. Look at the judgment against us. It's like we got no chance. When they say Satan, what's this? And they say Satan, the world was given unto Satan. Yeah, but instead of saying Satan, the world was given unto these false gods, and these false gods are at war among each other. Now, behold, it is not sufficient apology for them to say, oh, an evil king will come upon my country and possess it. Verse 30, I say unto thee, O man, all countries are Jehovah's. Be thou his servant unto peace and righteousness, having faith in him. Verse 31, behold, thy God hath come to put away old things, and to give unto you the kingdom of Jehovah, as they are in his exalted heavens. Verse 32, heed thou the judgment of thy God, thou cannot stay the hand of the Almighty. So with that being said, true God, rightful ruler of the heaven and earth, is against warfare. And he just gave you some of the judgments that fall upon those who engage in warfare. So now coming back to your Bible, your biblical God, you have the biblical God condoning warfare. Like I said, telling the Israelites to go into the land of Canaan to cause destruction. And there's plenty of scriptures in the Bible where the Lord is sending out evil spirits, deceiving spirits. So true God don't move in that manner. So what I'm showing you is that the OAHSPE Bible is basically showing you the difference between the Creator, true God, and false gods. And the gods ain't nothing but regular people like us. You know what I mean? It's nothing spectacular. God is just a title bestowed on an angel. No different than no different than king is a title bestowed on a person. So don't get it twisted. These are regular people like me and you in the spirit world, facing the struggles that we face. You know what I mean? But with that, I'd like to say peace and blessings and catch you on the next documentary. Shalom.